6 students shot outside school in a drive-by.
It definitely needs to be on the front page or the first story. Needs to be in everybody's face.
A call for the community's help, identifying the suspects and talking about rising violence. Colorado now has an air traffic control-like center to move patients through overflowing hospitals.
Being a nurse on a regular day is a tough job. Being a nurse during a global pandemic is a really tough job.
And she tried to get Northern Colorado to break off and form a new state. That didn't work, so she's running for Congress instead. If at first you don't succeed, try again. Next. It was a drive-by ambush. 6 students shot outside school in Aurora this afternoon. All of them are expected to survive as police search for possibly several shooters. And community leaders ask everyone to pay attention to the issue of rising youth violence. The 6 teenagers, ages 14 to 18, were shot in Nome Park, which is right across the street from Aurora Central High School. And they all go to school there. Police describe at least one car with a shooter, possibly others on foot or multiple vehicles. They ambushed the kids in the park around 1 this afternoon. No other details on suspects. Investigators, including a gang unit, are asking neighbors to check their home security cameras. Kelly Rinke just left a community meeting with youth violence prevention groups, and Kelly, they are literally going from one shooting to another at this point.
It is completely exhausting. Earlier today, before the shooting in Aurora, organizations that work to prevent youth violence in our communities were in Denver after a young man was shot last night. And then hours later, they came here to Aurora because 6 teens were shot at this park right behind me. Those local groups, as well as agencies from both the city of Denver and Aurora, organized an emergency meeting today to figure out what resources they can bring to schools now to keep kids safe. We were invited inside as they addressed underlying causes of violence. This meeting was not planned before yesterday. There's now a new sense of urgency after what's happened in the last 24 hours.
We need to have some honest conversations regarding this, because a lot of people don't know that this is going on in our city, right?
Jason McBride devotes his time to helping kids stay out of trouble. He told me, Kyle, today that he says it's incredibly sad that it took 6 kids to be shot in one day for more people to pay attention to this issue.
Yeah, when you hear folks say this is the reality, that's certainly scary stuff. Kelly, thank you. You hear us talk about hospitals nearing capacity statewide because of COVID patients, along with other folks who are in the hospital. There's still fewer than 100 ICU beds available right now. Each hospital has staff responsible for juggling patients, beds, rooms. Our Marshall Zellinger takes us inside Denver Health's control room.
It certainly doesn't have the same sound or look as air traffic control.
ACC, Michael speaking.
From this board, we can see every single bed, every single patient, anywhere within the walls of Denver Health.
Citing patient privacy reasons, Denver Health provided this footage instead of letting us inside the room that acts the same as air traffic control, but for patients instead of planes.
We know everything that's going on at any given time, or we should.
Justin Mares is the nurse manager for Denver Health's ACC, Administrative Clinical Coordinators.
We as administrative clinical coordinators figure out what the appropriate bed is for them, what the appropriate unit is, where we have resources for that patient, where we have physical space for that patient, and where we have specialty services for that patient.
When we tell you how many ICU beds are available, it's based on a once-a-day snapshot updated by the state health department. Today's update shows 94 empty ICU beds, but all hospitals, like Denver Health, know the number in real time. ICU beds are just one of the columns on the screen showing where patients are and where future patients can be.
Especially during COVID, that has all been ramped up. We have an emergency management department that we report up through. We give them our current bed availability, and other facilities are doing the same, and that all gets reported at a state level.
And the reporting internally is a bit old school.
A lot of what we do now is done via phone call. I'll get a phone call from our transfer center, I'll get a phone call from our ED, I'll get a phone call from various people all vying for these same kinds of resources.
To ease the reliance on phone calls, Denver Health is building out this room to put more decision makers in the same area, with COVID safety in mind.
Our goal with our patient flow center is that we're going to get everybody into one space to get rooms cleaned and turned over so that we can get more patients into the inpatient beds.
Now, each hospital can only see its own patient flow. They report to the state their bed capacity, and if they need immediate space, they contact what's known as the Combined Hospital Transfer Center, and under an executive order by the governor, that transfer center can reach out to other hospitals and find a taker for a patient and send that patient to the facility without the patient's consent, but the hospital knows they're coming and knows that they can care for them.
And the insurance or the state is going to cover that cost. People always ask us this. So we are at crisis standards of care for staffing. We do not have those emergency rules in for patient care. That's the point where you get people yelling about, like, rationing care. You have people yelling about death panels and stuff like that.
And there are two separate things. And when I was asking questions about this story, I was made clear. No, staffing is one thing where you can loosen the rules for staff and who can do what. Patients, that's when that room could be like, okay, who's more dire? We got to get that person in the bed next.
That's when it becomes what we worried about during the pandemic. Do we have enough ventilators for people? Who gets a ventilator? What are their chances? That's not where we are.
And that's why all these things are happening, to avoid that moment.
All right, Marshall, thank you. Hey, we saw a small dip in Colorado's COVID hospitalizations today. We will certainly take anything we can get because we're at 1,431 patients, down 29 from the day before. Started last week, we had just under 1,400 COVID patients who are sick enough they need to be in the hospital. A new state health order requires vaccines if you want to go to big indoor events with more than 500 people. Chances are, if you've been to an indoor concert in Denver this year, you've already seen those restrictions in action. The new rules require proof of vaccination to go to indoor, unseated events with more than 500 people in Arapahoe, Adams, Boulder, Jefferson counties. Also applies in Denver and Broomfield. Venues owned by AEG and Live Nation already require proof of vaccination or a recent negative test. They've been doing that since October. Those companies own or operate a ton of places in town where you see shows. The Gothic, Bluebird, Ogden Theater, Mission Ballroom, and the Fillmore Auditorium. So we're curious, did Denver need a mandate if most of the big concert venues are doing this on their own?
Some, venues are, allowing for, testing instead of vaccine. And while we're going to have that grace period here, we really do want to move to a place where, the vaccine is the requirement to get into these types of events.
Scott Bookman, state's COVID incident commander. You heard Scott mention a grace period. The order allows the venues to accept negative COVID tests instead of vaccination up through December 1st. After that, it has to be proof you're fully vaxxed to get into a concert. We looked at the state's weekly outbreak data, trying to find if there were recent outbreaks tied to the kind of large indoor events covered by this new health order. I want to bring in Steve Steger to talk about this. Steve, the state believes that there are such outbreaks. It's tracing them that's really tough.
Really tough. We've talked about this. Contact tracing in general has been tough over the last few months because there are, once again, so many cases and the contact tracers are starting to get burned out. But these cases in particular are pretty tricky. A lot of these large events, like a concert, even a sporting event, they tend to draw people in from all over. Now, they're not just coming from the same geographical area. So when they go home, days later, they end up testing positive. Case investigators may ask where they've been, but they don't necessarily have the knowledge to make the connection. Glenn Mays, a professor of health policy at Colorado School of Public Health, he says that health agencies across the country have actually been working to try to improve the way that they talk to each other.
It can be multiple public health agencies doing those case investigations and contact tracing, and it's more difficult for them to see patterns in terms of people who are at the same event. So there's been some significant improvements in technology and also just in standardizing the protocols for how we do this work across multiple public health agencies.
Late this afternoon, I talked to one of the researchers who helps model COVID transmission for the state. He said that this public health order itself may not move the needle much on transmission, but this is what I found interesting. He says that there's data that shows that simply announcing a public health order is enough to get people's attention. It reminds them that the virus is spreading, might lead to them taking some precautions, even if they're not directly impacted by this, even if they're not going to concerts or those unseated events with more than 500 people.
I feel like that, Steve, is one of the things that hopefully we've kind of learned through the pandemic, that when one of these orders comes out, it's not necessarily about 100% compliance. Look, that person over there is doing it wrong. If you get the vast majority of people going, oh, yeah, sure, that's no problem, then you can make a positive impact.
And it's interesting because some of the loudest voices are like, well, this doesn't do much, right? What's an event with 500 people, and what does it matter if you're in a seat or you're not in a seat? I talked to the epidemiologist about that today. The unseated part of this has a lot to do with the fact that people are crowded together. Your likelihood of transmitting something is a lot higher. So there is reasoning behind this, but also just the fact that there's an order might actually get people's attention.
Steve Steger reporting from an unseated event to me in a seated event. Thank you, Steve. Hey, next time you drive in Santa Fe through Denver and you pass VFW Post 1, have some pride, because you helped the veterans there build their new community center. Your Word of Thanks microgiving campaign last week raised almost $50,000 to help finish that project. $50,000. And you're approaching an incredible milestone of microgiving generosity. And you know, just in time for the holidays. You've now raised $4.9 million for Colorado's small to mid-sized nonprofits through Word of Thanks. So no pressure for me to come up with a good $5 million idea, but I'll be back with our next group project for good in our community on Wednesday.
The election rigging conspiracy theory likely started in Colorado. Now, the local radio station that gave it airtime is facing a new lawsuit.
There's a history of this land and a connection to it that doesn't go away.
Before it was a ski resort, it was the homeland of several Native American tribes. First step for Winter Park is acknowledging it. Then what?
Winter Park promises they're not just words, though they are words spoken for the first time. An acknowledgement that that ski area sits on Native American ancestral lands. Our Nelson Garcia explains.
The names on the sign may read Winter Park or Mary Jane, but now the ski resort has officially acknowledged this land is the ancestral homeland of the Arapaho, the Cheyenne, and the Ute Native American tribes.
It's a good step forward, and we're really excited to lead it.
Jen Miller is the communications manager for Winter Park. She says trail maps, signs, and other communications will now carry this official land acknowledgement.
There's a history of this land and a connection to it that doesn't go away.
In a lot of ways, a land acknowledgement seems like a statement about the past, but I think in reality, it's more of a commitment to what's being done in the future.
Connor Ryan is a professional skier and Native American.
I'm HUNKPAPA, LAKOTA.
He initiated the conversation with Winter Park more than a year ago.
Native tribes didn't give these lands up. They were taken from them. And there's no immediate way for Winter Park or Skiers and Borders or whatever to automatically correct that and give everything back.
But Ryan is now working with the resort to support Native American businesses, to give more access to Native Americans to outdoor sports like skiing, and to provide scholarships to Native American kids.
I think making that acknowledgement it's a statement of good faith to the Native community.
Most organizations making land acknowledgements are government entities, government institutions. But for Winter Park, for a private company to do this, I think it is unique.
Ryan and Miller call it progress.
It's a move towards reconciliation and inclusion.
For Next, I'm Nelson Garcia.
Ryan's releasing a film called Spirit of the Peaks, the connection between skiing and his Native American roots. Winter Park is going to host a screening on December 4th. The former employee of Colorado-based Dominion Voting Systems is expanding his web of lawsuits against the conservative figures who pushed the big lie that Dominion worked with Antifa to rig the presidential election against President Trump. Eric Coomer is now suing Salem Media, the parent company of 710 KNUS Radio, along with one of its talk show hosts, Randy Corporate, who's also Colorado's Republican National Committee man. Coomer was forced into hiding after right-wing conspiracy theorists claimed that he was behind the rigging of the election. That claim, which has never been accompanied by any actual evidence, spread from Colorado clear up to President Trump himself. The lawsuit says that 710 KNUS falsely branded Coomer a traitor and a terrorist when radio hosts Randy Corcoran, Peter Boyles, Deborah Flora, and George Brockler gave a platform to the man who was behind the election rigging conspiracy theory. We should note, Brockler is a 9 News legal analyst.
His alleged crime sparked a first-of-its-kind action in Colorado, and tomorrow is his day in court. There's another candidate in the race to represent Colorado's new congressional district. She's best known for leading a failed attempt to have Northern Colorado secede. Don't you break away either. Next, we'll be right back.
A trial begins tomorrow for the law enforcement use of force incident that led to Colorado's first case of failure to intervene. Former Adams County Sheriff's Deputy Andrew McCormick is charged with assaulting a handcuffed inmate back in August. We talked to that victim, Michael Cassidy, back in August. The incident at the Adams County Detention Center resulted in criminal charges against 3 deputies. Deputies Chad Krause and Michael Montgomery were also charged with assault. Their trials will happen later. Those 3 were the first law enforcement officers ever to be charged under Colorado's new failure to intervene law. That law requires officers stop a colleague who's using excessive force, or at least report it after it happens. In this incident, the county's already paid the victim $300,000 to prevent a civil lawsuit. Colorado's Democrats have a good shot at keeping control of the state legislature, at least in the near future. Today, the state Supreme Court signed off on redistricting maps for the state House and the state Senate. The way the state House map is drawn, Democrats are firmly in the driver's seat. State Senate is expected to be more competitive, but still favoring Democrats, who will have 17 safe seats as of now and would only need 18 to control the Senate. The lines are redrawn based on population every decade. Hey, there's another Republican joining the race for Colorado's new 8th congressional district, Adams and Weld counties. State Senator Barbara Kirkmeyer got in today. Her announcement mentioned inflation, open border, and lawlessness in America as priorities. Kirkmeyer is best known as a staunch supporter of the oil and gas industry, a critic of the statewide public health restrictions during the pandemic, and one of the leaders of a failed attempt to have northern Colorado secede from the state, which she now seeks to represent in Congress.
Calmer winds in downtown Denver after a windy, warm day with temperatures in record territory. 74 in the city, 80s on the map to the south. All going to change with the arrival of a storm tomorrow night. There'll be a little snow in the high country and the chance for some snow showers here in Denver midnight Tuesday through noon on Wednesday. The big story will be the cold. Back in the 70s again tomorrow, and then highs Wednesday in the 30s and lower 40s. And again, maybe a little bit of snow. Tonight we're dry, lighter winds, low 48. Tomorrow, a mix of clouds and sunshine, a high above average at 70. Snow showers possible late tomorrow night into Wednesday. Not expecting accumulation. Look at the high Wednesday, 40 with a low of 18, then a warming and drying trend right into next weekend.
The most Colorado thing we saw today is an unexpected show on the drive home. That and your feedback next. Juggling work-home balance on the way home from work. That's the most Colorado thing we saw today. One of our producers was driving home Friday night, got stopped at the red light at York and Spear, and out comes this dude with some in-drive entertainment, glow-in-the-dark juggling pins right in the middle of the crosswalk, asking for tips. This might be more of a Denver thing than Colorado, but we'll take it for the initiative alone. Send the most Colorado things you see to next@9news.com. or use the hashtag HeyNext on Twitter. It was on Twitter that a viewer AW provided this piece of feedback. Please stop equating northern Colorado and Weld County. That's a reference to the new GOP congressional candidate, Barbara Kirkmeyer, and her failed attempt to have northern Colorado secede to form the 51st state of North Colorado. And that is a good point that you make there, AW, because it was 11 counties specifically that voted on secession. Larimer County was not among them. It was Weld and then a bunch of counties out in eastern Colorado. Kirkmeyer's attempt at secession failed, so that means that kids from Weld County can still get in-state tuition at CSU if they're interested. So there's that. We'll see you next time.